Welcome to the Breakneck Podcast. I feel like I say this every week. We've got a really interesting episode. I assume it's going to be interesting because I don't even know what the topic is going to be. Matt, I'm going to punt it straight to you. Take it away.
I teased it to Ian, but let's get right into it. I think we are undergoing a major shift, and a shift as important as the one that we had last January when we started the podcast. At that point, we were going from essentially doing AI as a thing where you type and you get a chat response. You put in a little effort, you get a little response, to when we were moving towards agents. And I think over the last year, we've seen a huge growth in agents, but we're undergoing another big shift in how people interact with agents that I think is just as important as the move from kind of a little, you put a little and then you get a little response, to one where you could have long-running agents that are planning and doing their own work. And so I think 2025 was all about agents kind of becoming big. And we did like a year-end episode. And I think even in early December, I was like, yeah, it didn't really play out as hard as I could. And now I see people meeting my standard, which is spending $10,000 a month and just saying, I have a budget for agents and I'm going to try to meet it. And that was my big thing in January 2025 of, are we going to see? And so I think similarly now we're going to have another shift, and I want to orient 2026 in agents around a new theme. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So we had 2025, hey, agents are going to replace chat. Claude Code and what's happened with multi-agent swarms and things like that, I think it's delivered about a month behind our expectations. And what's happening now, I think, is just as important and is going to lead to far more adoption. And I think it's going to be pretty controversial.
Okay, so this better live up to the hype, Matt. That's all I'm saying. You've got us super excited here.
No, hopefully. That's what we're doing. We're going to get some tension going at the beginning of the episode. Here's what's going to happen. It's going to go from you telling agents what to do to agents prompting you what to do. That's the big shift that we're undergoing right now. Let's take Claude Bot. Claude Bot, now Openclaw, very, for a moment called Moltbot, which led to Moltbook, is the idea that you have long-running agents. Basically, the agent is always available and will take action on its own, including, doing things like turning off and on your lights around your home. But then, hey, sending you a message, sending you reminders and things like that. That idea that we would kick off an agent and it would work for us was in 2025. But in early 2026, in mid-January, when ClaudeBot blew up, it moved towards an always-on agent who is going to take action on its own, including telling people what to do. And I think, there's a lot of excitement about ClaudeBot and these Moltbot, Moltbook, the agents interacting with each other. But I think anytime an agent interacts with another agent, in my mind, it's not really that big a deal, because it could have just been an agent doing it itself, right? Like there's not really a separation.
I mean, we've had computers talking to computers for a long time.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I got an API. It's like, oh, I don't think about my application as a set of applications talking to other applications. It uses an API, and my experience of it is just a singular, I open the web page and I get my application. And so, I think a lot of the excitement right now is about AI telling other AI what to do, but that's nothing new. AI telling you what to do has big impacts. And of course, we've always lived our entire lives in a technological society where the needs of techno capital have told us what to do. I became a physicist, and I realized after, pretty deep into my physics training that I'm like, you were teaching me how to build bombs. That's what all these classes were. Like, why did I take that class? Like, X-ray diffraction into the Hall ROM and all. I'm building a fusion bomb, right? They're just making sure they had a standing reserve of these types of people, right? So we've always had our lives pinned upon. We sit in traffic. We're controlled by technological systems. But I think the idea of an intelligent system who is interacting with you as a boss would, or as a coworker, or as an advisor, or as a coach, is an entirely new psychological change, but also is going to radically improve how quickly AI is pushed into businesses, because it's going to change our habits tremendously, right? It's one thing to remember, maybe I should check with OpenAI, ChatGPT to see if there's any existing literature on this before I get started. That's a good practice, but something that people kind of do a little bit. They do it in fits and starts. You might remember, you might not. Sometimes I'll start a ChatGPT thread and it'll search for 15 minutes. I'll forget to go look at the results because I've already moved on to something else. Right now, you invert that to the AI thinking, hey, Matt needs to write a report. Hey, Matt should probably do a set of research. Hey, I should probably synthesize that into roughly the format that Matt needs. All that's happening in the background. So now, and this is something I've been experimenting with in our product and things like that, and I think it's real. You come with almost a finished work, and now it's, okay, is this correct? Do I get feedback? Do you need to take action? The AI has pushed me into doing work. It's created the situation where I will be habituated into doing what the AI says. And I see no coming back from it. And that's my big, it's like more and more, we work for the algorithm. Like, we've had time cards. You got to clock in and clock out. The degree to which that kind of style of you're going to do what the AI tells you to do, I think is going to be a big psychological shift, a big social shift, and will be the reason that AI penetrates the 99.9% of companies that don't really use AI right now. So that's the thing I want to watch. That's my big prediction.
Okay.
Hopefully that's big enough, airy enough.
It is.
To sustain this episode, maybe a couple more.
Okay, let's talk about where to start. So do I agree with you that this is happening right now? And the answer is yes. If you listen to the episodes we've done so far this year, directly, but we haven't really pointed at it as you are doing right now. They've been around this topic. Language that I've been using is personal assistant. When we looked at Claude Cowork is that 3 weeks ago? One of our very popular episodes, by the way. Our minds were blown.
We've been well on the YouTube algorithm. You got to stick at it for like a year, but then it starts producing dividends. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, actually, I am tangent here because we've never done this and we need to do it. Hey, you in your car driving home from work, listening to this, or sitting down while the kids have gone to bed watching this on YouTube, you need to give us some feedback. We want some feedback. What do you like? What do you not like? What's working?
It could be as
what do we
easy
need
as
to do more
liking
of?
the episode or subscribing, and now we sound like every YouTuber in the world. But
we're a year in. We're a bit late to this ask. I mean, the point is, we'll look as you know if you've listened. We'll talk for a long, long time. But I want to have our listeners be accountable. We need some feedback. But
yeah.
Okay.
Back to this topic. This isn't free. You have a homework.
Yeah, it's not free. Yeah. So yeah, is this happening now? Yes, absolutely. Claude Cowork really blew my mind, and it's not exactly what you're talking about, but it had a couple of characteristics that were a stepping stone to Maltbot, Openclaw, whatever you want to call it. One of the transitions actually that you didn't call out to make this happen is, let's call it local AI. It's okay. It's not really local. It's local in the sense that it is local AI, but it's not private AI like Mark Hainan would talk about. That's a shift that has happened. It's the asynchronous nature of it. So it doesn't have to happen in real time. I think Openclaw in and of itself is the first example of it. It's nowhere near being what we need it to be. It's hard to set up. It's complicated.
It's insecure. It's all those things.
It's insecure. But it's also all these bad things. But that's not the point. The MVP is fantastic. It does exactly what it's supposed to be. So is it happening? Yes. And it's super exciting and a little bit scary. But let's talk about the scary part. The kind of the social change. You actually made a point last week which kind of resonated with me, which was, look, we've been slaves to productivity and output for a long, long time. And we like to think that, there was a time when that wasn't the case. We used to sit on the beach and once we caught the fish to eat for the day, we were good. But once, I suppose, organized agriculture happened, we got sucked into, agriculture. And after that, there was kind of the industrial age and we got sucked into factories and you had to. So this notion of being a slave to the algorithm, as we might call it nowadays, on the outside, on the surface, sounds pretty scary, but it's not really, because what we're doing at this point is inviting this agent in to do various things far.
Heidegger calls, the domestication to the gathering logos of being, is that there's always been this kind of thing, which is society and our collective resource allocation process. We've always been structured to that. We've been structured to language. You're forced to say things. You're forced to identify as a part of society. You're a builder. You're an elite. You're a slave. This has always been the case. During the industrialization process, when people came off of the land into the cities, that was very disrupted. In China, we had the largest migration in human history. People went from the countrysides to the cities, 500 million people in like 15, 16 years, which is by far the largest migration. And they were moving great distances. And that was in the early 21st century. We've always had to accommodate the demands of whether it's using language, being part of an agricultural society, part of an industrial society, or part of an information society. Like, always this weight has been upon us. So it's not new in that sense,
Yeah.
but it's about to
Well,
get very weird.
and
It's
the
you're gonna have to
promise
change my program.
of the promise of this is grand. Really, what we're talking about here is personal assistance, I think, for right now. So it's got to be secure, it's got to be local, it's got to be private, it's got to be in service of you, Matt, the individual. If that is delivered on, and I have no doubts that the industry won't deliver on that. The question then, at least where my mind goes initially right now, is in a sort of commercial nature. What does this mean for the stack of technology providers out there? And the first episode I think we did last year, we talked about this realization that if you're an enterprise application, if you're I don't know, if you're Salesforce, the UI is disappearing, right? The customers headed off to ChatGPT, and that's where they're going to do all their interactions. And OpenAI and Anthropic, their valuations in large part are built on this belief that consumers are going to flock to their UI to do all the things that they need to and want to do. And my complaint has always been and remains that the chat interaction is shit. It's not scalable. It's not good enough. But they're working on making that better, and so on and so forth. But the belief for the last 12 months has been those guys are going to own the consumer and own the user because that's the UI that you go to. And if you're Salesforce, you're just a database with an API, which that Salesforce bit I believe. But what we've just seen with Openclaw and with Claude Cowork is local is probably going to be where it's at, right? And
Yeah,
it's not about the LLM now.
this gets into like something very important, which is right now the Openclaw design is that you tell your agent what you want. And it essentially acts as a personal assistant to help you get that. And the way it's going to do that is tell you, hey, Matt, it's time to do this. And, I've come up with a bunch of categories of stuff it's going to do. It's going to notify you so you can stay oriented to what's going on. It's going to escalate things if they're not going right. And that's very important because agents get blocked quite frequently. You need to escalate and unblock it or give it a new permission or things like that. It is going to get your feedback on something, which is going to be a huge part of the human in the loop. Hey, Matt, I did this for you. Is this what you're thinking? Yes. Press go. And if you use Claude Code, you'll recognize all of these different instances. And then the last one, the most scary, is, Matt, I need you to go do this. And all of these things, read this, look at it, unblock, give me feedback, but go do stuff for me. That's where we're really going to have a lot of contention, because when it's your local bot and you told it in the morning, hey, make sure I get these things done today, even setting a timer with Siri is in a way interacting with computer, tell me to do something later. And when you have your Openclaw bot running, hey, remember to help me organize this party. Hey, Matt, I'm going to need you to go use your credit card to buy these. We talk about agentic commerce. I need your credit card to go buy these balloons for the party. It's asking me to do something, but I still have a deep sense of agency, and it's a personal assistant. Look how we talked about this. But what about if it's an agent that is owned by your company and it's telling you what to do, right? What is your relationship with that? What is your autonomy within that system? And is it going to tell you exactly what to do? Or is it going to act in a way of like, hey, this would help the company. Can you choose to do this, right? So that the maintenance of autonomy within systems of agents directing you. And so it's not good or bad. My point is, in this kind of idealistic it's all local and all self-directed. Like, you're telling the agents what you need to be help with coordinating throughout your day. Remind me to do this, turn the oven off, that kind of stuff. That's valuable. It's an agent telling you what to do, but it's increasing your autonomy. It's making you more capable of moving through the world. It's opening up your possibilities. And then there's the one which is, hey, I need you to review these 6 documents. And instead of you getting 6 documents in the morning and, you return them at night,
Yeah.
it's timing you. And I've been building this too, like just experimenting. Like, how long did it take you, Matt, to deliver that?
Okay. Well, let's start on the personal side. You have your goal for the month is to be healthy. Okay, Matt, what does it look like to be healthy? Well, I don't eat enough vegetables, and I sit at my desk too much, and well, let's just leave it there. Okay, so all right, great. Here's a good plan for you. I'll order the food for you, and you need to do a 10-minute walk in the morning and 10-minute walk in the afternoon. Great.
Mhm.
Okay, so you'll remind me to. Fantastic. What are the repercussions, Matt, what should I do or tell you when you don't do your walk?
Yeah, well, like, we've talked about, like, hey, give me DoorDash. No, like,
Well, what
don't
about
like,
let's say you had a real health issue and you're like, "No, no, no, the doctor said I'm not gonna last another year if I don't do this stuff." Okay, Matt, let's have a conversation about what the penalties are. I can imagine physical penalties. I can imagine you saying, "Yeah, don't order me any food if I don't go
Mhm.
for a walk." You and I we're not grown-ups, but we are somewhat responsible. I could see us, maybe eliminating a
Let me
meal
use
as a
another
penalty.
scenario, which is, okay, I want to be healthy. Great. American ideal, individualism. Great. What if you tell your health insurance company you get a discount from your health insurance company if you eat healthy, and then you have to ask the health insurance bot what you can eat? No, I mean, these are real things. This is just this. It's the same basic operation. First, I told the bot to help me be healthy. Next, I entered into an economic relationship with a large company, and it used a much more sophisticated bot. Maybe that's good, maybe it's not. Then it's telling me what to do. And so, like, we start to see our autonomy evaporating. Let me give you a good example of this insurance thing already affecting my life, right? So I try to keep the number of cars I own to a minimum. And now I live in the suburbs. We have 2 cars, but a lot of times, like, somebody else will be using the second car and I'll need a third car. And so I would borrow it from my in-laws who live nearby. And they came to me and they're like, "Hey, we need to kind of like have you stop using the car." We're like, "Yeah, why? What's the deal?" They're like, "Well, our insurance gives us a discount if we use this little app that tracks when we're using the car.
Yeah,
You don't have that app. And so whenever you drive the car, the mileage goes up, but they don't have any record of it." And so they
yeah,
started asking us, like, "Hey, who's driving your car?" So we need to, like, the heat is on. So that is a relationship they entered into
yeah,
autonomously, which is, hey, we're getting a discount. But now we start to see Matt doesn't get to use a car as a consequence of this kind of algorithmic
yeah.
interaction. Of course, it's not
But
like a
but
human sitting there, it's an
none of
agent.
none of
Or
this is new, though. So, that's been around for 10 years, right? Particularly for young drivers,
yeah,
right?
which is good.
I
By the way,
Yeah.
I am not against paternalism in the way I was when I was like 19 years old, but
Well,
like,
and they enter in. So, another example is you earlier said in the work context, "Hey, I'm gonna time you how long it takes to do this." That's been around since the first factory,
oh
right?
yeah.
So the question is whether that sort of parametric approach to running our lives actually works for humans. And I think the answer is it doesn't, right? We know, or not completely. We are human. We're not, completely rational in the way we think and operate. So, I guess my response to you is twofold. One, we've seen this before, and two, I don't know how well it's actually going to work in reality because it hasn't worked that well in the past.
Well, look, I think the success of Claudebot, or Openclaw as is now, the Claudebot instance, shows us that this type of personal assistant is valuable. the horror of like the Matrix as like the opposite was agents telling us what to do for our own good, but we've somehow even either explicitly lost that autonomy, but even something like, well, driving's a privilege. That's what I used to hear when I was younger, right? Like, oh, driving's a privilege. Maybe driving was a privilege in 1940. Like you got a car, but there's plenty other options, right? I live in Texas in 2026. Driving is not a privilege. There's no other way to get anywhere, including it's not legal in certain places to bike on the side of a road or walk on the side of the road. I simply think that there is no way to live without a car. Like a car and it happened. My point about that is it happened gradually. It went from a society that a car became a small advantage to one where it became a large advantage. It was still a privilege, to one where it was optional, but you probably want a car, to one like the modern suburban life is absolutely requires. And I think we can see the same thing with agents giving us direction and the capabilities, the intelligence capabilities, the abilities to draw fine distinctions and make logical conclusions give these agents so much more power into our lives. And we talked about the AI 2027 Doom report that eventually AI would just completely control us. And now we're kind of looking at, I don't know if we're fated to, the doom. It's not like we're on a path to doom necessarily, although a lot of people think we are. But you can start to see this possibility open up that like, man, I'm so much more productive and healthy when I'm using an agent in one way. But I also see a slippery slope that we're going to slide down to. The agent's going to go from helping me do what I want to helping me do what I should want to telling me exactly what to do and I don't have a choice. And by the way, it's designed by a bureaucrat who hates me.
Yeah.
You look at some of the healthcare systems, like no one wanted it like that, but it just ends up in a place of
Yeah.
just insanity.
Yeah. Last week we talked about Dari Amadei's essay, pessimistic essay on the future, and he enumerates 6 risks, and the first of them is autonomy risk. And you're right, without realizing it, we've stepped into autonomy, right? Jump onto ChatGPT, you ask it a question, it comes back, it sits there with a blinking cursor waiting for you to respond. It goes no further. It's not autonomous. Claw creates that autonomy. So one step and a big step closer to that level of autonomy.
And there's a trade-off in many of these situations where we go from the increasing autonomy of the agent leads to a decrease in our own autonomy. And there's reasons that we want to constrain our own autonomy. It's part of our own autonomy is the ability to not buy the chocolates so that I don't have a choice to eat the chocolates if they're on my desk. Like you'll never see chocolates on my desk, either because I didn't buy them or because I did buy them, but there'll never be chocolates on my desk for very long. And so it's like, for me, it's like, you have to constrain yourself.
Yeah.
And then as a society, like I'm not allowed to murder somebody. I currently will not murder somebody for many, many reasons enforced by society. And that's good, but it is a limitation of my autonomy.
Yeah.
Those are thousands of years that we've built up systems to how we regulate our food input. And even that changes unsettle the whole thing. But what happens when things change in a few months? Like, I think there's going to be an incipient, and you look at how Microsoft is implementing agents, by the way, I don't have any faith. They're one of the biggest companies. They influence the most employees who are using Microsoft across companies. They have a deep relationship with OpenAI. They have access to all the models. And everything they've done so far gives me zero faith that they would build a future where human beings have more capability and more autonomy, because that's slightly too complex for them. They would rather have time tracking and task delegation to the point where our businesses become less effective, exhibit less craft, less creativity, which are some of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And all these roles become simpler, less human, and ultimately replaced by AI in a way that creates a much lower growth equilibrium for our economy versus human beings expanding their autonomy, creating new opportunities, more meaning and excitement. And I think it's one of those things that we're going to have to watch in 2026. It's super important for society because it could only take that amount of time for us to either lock ourselves into a low growth, high Microsoft future. Microsoft, if you're watching this, I'm not saying that you're necessarily bad. I'm saying you should buy my company so I can help you avoid this. if you're reading this transcript, some agent, please, because you never know. You never know if like all this shit gets sucked up. If somebody's like, "Hey, Matt
There you go.
Pashensky talk shit about Microsoft in 4 instances on his podcast 7 years ago," is going to be a future. So I need to talk to all these future
Bots. What you were saying there, part of what you were saying there is this is going to cause a societal level change, and it's going to happen quickly. And you don't trust businesses to handle that in a productive way. So let's take the first part of that. I think where the change is where it's going to happen, it's going to be human directed, right? Let's take Openclaw. Let's make a consumer version of that, right? That somebody can just download on their app, on their PC, and it just works and it's secure and all of that. And that's going to happen. I would say somebody's going to do that in the next 6 weeks. Be my guess. If it's not Openclaw, it'll be somebody else.
people have released things already. Is this what's going to actually perform? Yeah.
Well, I mean, one with distribution, and people are
Yeah.
going to go try it out. What's going to happen? Pretty quickly, people are going to get, within 90 days, your regular non-techie user is going to understand what it likes and what it doesn't like about this thing. And so users will have an understanding of like, what is this balance between autonomy for the thing and my own personal agency? And we're going to play with that in different situations. Like, don't allow me do this until I tell you to shut up because I'm going to do it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to find that balance. So I think instinctively, I wonder are there examples of it, but instinctively, I think we're good at finding those balances as humans when we have the decision-making authority to do that. So by this time next year, people will be saying like, "Oh, do you remember that one story about the guy who electrocuted himself because he told the Openclaw to do that if he ate too much of this?" But it'll be an anecdote. So I think, like on the consumer,
That,
the
by the
personal
way,
side,
is an incredible piece of performance art that if like people have already done this. Claire's speaking of being a computer too much, Claire's getting on me about slouching. And people have built these things where if it sees you slouching, it like
it
taps
buzzes you.
you.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Engage your back muscles and all that stuff. Anybody
But
who just did that in a more general way, like
it's
horn
going to
goes
happen.
off,
There's going to be funny stories about it. But
will immediately crush on social media. In fact, I'm kind of like I should go do it myself just for I don't self promote well enough. Yeah.
No, you don't. But let's talk about the business side of things.
Mm-hmm.
If COVID taught us anything, this key tracking and all of that kind of shit, for productivity, that's where business goes to. Business always goes to the data and ignores the context. And so I think what we'll see is exactly what you suggested, which is a new age version of a time clock, which is saying, "Hey, Matt, put your phone down. You should be working," or "Hey, Matt, you seem to spend an awful lot of time away from your desk," or "Hey, Matt, yeah, the lunch you ate is not going to be productive to you and, being able to review your documents in the afternoon."
Sorry, I was distracted.
I'll cut it out. What did it tell you? Say it again.
My company's agent told me that I was blocking someone else, and I had to go unblock them by registering something, and I did it real quickly.
All right. And the incentives are there, Matt, because we're in the middle of a fucking podcast and you turn
Well, it's
around to do that.
measuring. It's measuring. I did it as a joke, but it's real, and it's measuring
Yeah.
how long it takes me to unblock. So I feel compelled to like drop what
There
I'm
you
doing
go.
and go unblock somebody else, which is good. Like that's going to lead to a better running company, but it also is infringing my autonomy pretty aggressively. So
Well, you are exactly the right person to be talking about this. Where is the balance? What does the balance look like? What do we need? I equally do not trust businesses to come up with that right balance between autonomy for the agent and then agency for the human.
yeah, we
in
need to
work
have a
context.
more expansive sense of okay, what are we trying to accomplish at work? Because if you're at work already, your autonomy has been I mean, the fact that I'm in a fucking office instead, I don't know, like on the beach or something like that, like, your autonomy has been constrained. We have to have a pretty broad understanding of autonomy, and business itself curtails our autonomy tremendously. Things like work from home, things like an employee having their own budget to spend cards, ramp. Ramp's a great example. Increases your autonomy. Nobody comes to me and says, "Can I spend it?" I kind of like, well, don't go nuts, but that's freedom, and it's a freedom that doesn't infringe on anyone else's freedom. So there is a quantity of autonomy.
there's a reason we enable that level of freedom. 'Cause, like,
Yeah,
I
because
don't want to
people
be
can be more
micromanaging
creative,
you.
more motivated, and in many ways, the ability of we talk about like functional computation, right? Like the one of the big beliefs around AI is that it is a universal function approximator, right? So if we have any kind of algorithmic assessment or way to do something, that computers will be able to approximate that same algorithm, right? If you think of a company as an autonomous agent, you want your company to be able to approximate or to implement any function. It needs to be a universal functional approximator. Your business needs to attain any function. And what companies do instead is they try to make them efficient. And what you do is you take efficiency and you're constraining the set of functions that your company will be able to obtain, right? Or at least extending the amount of time it will take to get them to forever or whatever, right? And so, you might be in a SaaS business and you need to alter yourself into be in a AI business, right? I mean, what is the difference between those? But the more that you've put guardrails around people, almost always it's going to make you much more efficient at being the old thing, but really limit your capabilities for approximating the general functions that a company should take in the economy, right? And so from a business perspective, we are trying to give autonomy to people to compensate for the fact that AI also is what I would call non-ergodic. AI is terrible at actually generating general responses. It generally can respond to any question with a very AI-ified thing.
Mhm.
They talk about science right now as advancing very quickly in places where there's a lot of data to train the AI, and it's actually starving the places where there's no AI. There's not a good way to generate new data, right? It's because all
Mhm.
of the benefit is into where there's data. So what's happening is AI is collapsing the space of what's available to us, and it's making our existing systems more performant, more efficient, because that's what it's programmed to do. It's like we're using it to do things faster, but it's also collapsing the space of things that we can do, and that's happening silently. And but that's what we need to watch. Can we use the inbuilt creativity and ability to stay perplexed and come up with new, well-crafted solutions? That's what humans still, as far as I can tell, do. They can do weird stuff. They are terrible and awesome. They can do new things, and we
Yeah.
will have to judge these systems by whether they support companies being more capable, more flexible, have more energy, or do they support collapsing systems of efficiency where eventually all of the juice is squeezed out and no new juice comes out, and you end up with a bunch of
Yeah,
agents, things that
this is
aren't that
this
valuable
is
anymore.
awesome. So if I wanna try and play this back and see if we can build into a bit of a framework. Henry Ford opens his first production line, and he hires you, and he brings you in, and he says, "Do this and only do this," right? Turn this thing around, and that's all you do, and the next person does something else, and there is no latitude, no room for you to do anything other than those things, and then at 11 a.m., you may rush to the bathroom and come back. You have 5 minutes. And then at 1 p.m., you may have lunch for 30 minutes. And then at 5 p.m., you're done. Do your time card. That's it. You're done. So he did that because he knew what he wanted, right? He was like, we're building these Model Ts and they're all black and that's it. No other colors. That's all we're doing. You kind of suggested that there's data, that's the known world. We know the outcomes we want. There's data around it. Once you walked out the door of the factory, you were back into the real world. There was no rules, right? You had tremendous agency as a human. You needed that because you didn't know if a car was going to drive past you or there was going to be food for your dinner or whatever. And so you kind of take that model and cast it into the future here. There's a world where your agent, Openclaw, a part of your world that it understands, and it's able to help you with those things. We can't remember all the things that we need to do and how things work and all of this shit. We'll have Openclaw, our agent, work on that stuff. And what you're saying is that known world, and it's known because the data exists, is compressing and getting
Mm-hmm.
smaller. This podcast is about the flip side of that, which is all the new shit that needs to be absorbed and understood and interacted with and modeled in our mind. And so that world is, we know it's getting bigger. We complained about it last week that it's much bigger than it was a year ago. And that's where the creativity and the all the novel and the new things happen. So if you take that model again, which you already did, and you kind of talked about it in a business world, there's all the known stuff, give that to AI. All the sort of unknown yet to kind of be worked out. There's no data, there's no signal to actually feed into an AI. That's where we as humans will continue to play. We think it's going to be a lot of fun, you and I particularly, because we're problem solvers. But so if you are Microsoft, what if we were talking to Microsoft, what guidance would we give them?
So Microsoft sells to enterprises. And I was listening to Gary Tan this week, and he had a good post, and it echoed. I think maybe he listened to the podcast. Gary, shout out if you stole it from us. But something we said a while ago, it's just like, now just go do bigger stuff, which I stole from other people. So we're all just riding the zeitgeist. But what he said is that there's going to be two types of people who just kind of say, well, AI is going to replace my work, and you can chill, and it's going to be cheaper to get your services and things like that, because instead of having a person on the other side, it's an agent, and things are going to get cheaper, and you'll be able to live like a pretty simple life. And then there's people who have that will to build, and you'll be able to do insane things that you never thought were possible in your lifetime, right? And so if anything, raise your standards, improve your craft, and improve your expectations about what's going to happen in your life. And AI is going to be incredible for you. If I have advice to Microsoft, though, the way that is happening now, Claudebot was built by one guy. That's what's happening. You have Anthropic and OpenAI. OpenAI has like 7,000 employees now. Google has 400,000, 200,000 employees. It's some insane number, right? Like, these are enormous corporations. And this guy goes and builds Claudebot by himself, right? Because there's no rules and no legal checks and none of that. And he just kind of did it. And so it's the type of huge thinking that's happening now and the type of amazing outcomes. And Claudebot is an incredible outcome. One person, though, because it didn't involve coordinating people or systems other than just he had his own helpers and they helped him. But similarly, Claudebot has not yet turned into a 1,000-person organization that is transforming business. So if I'm Microsoft, I actually need businesses, which I'm talking about multi-1,000-person institutions that collaborate intensively to reduce the overall transaction costs that happen within those businesses, right? That is the interesting thing. Microsoft basically only sells at this point in history to enterprises. It's, consumer game is in the gutter. I mean, aside from like Xbox, right? It's an enterprise company. It has Azure, which is the one good growth part of its company. It has all these enterprise software systems, right? No human being would choose to use Microsoft Word unless they worked inside one of these organizations. So if I'm Microsoft, I'm thinking like, okay, I have all these advantages of legal teams and complexity and capital on the line. And also society has a huge amount to gain. If we lose the capacity to do big things with our giant organizations, it will be equivalent to the deindustrialization that happened essentially after World War II, is that you had these enormous, I was watching Ford versus Ferrari, which is a fun movie. Initially, I was like, this is all right. I watched it again, and it's like, this is good. It's kind of a classic movie. It's got a good heart, good fun stuff. And the Ford Jr., or like the Ford the third or fourth, whatever it was on, right? He's like, see that factory that produced, 1,000 B-29s a month in 1944 or whatever. And it was like, it was this huge world-changing coordination effort that slowly decayed until the 1970s. They're closing down all these factories because they had become so stiff, they had not kept up with markets. And now you see they basically only produce F-150s is the only thing Ford actually produces for domestic consumption. It is a very specialized F-150 company now, from one that was able to, in months, transition from building cars to building giant bomber airplanes, right, in the 40s, right? And so it's like, it's that compression, it's that kind of sterilization of the organization. And deindustrialization was disastrous for the United States on multiple fronts. Number one, it was politically disastrous. You think about your least favorite politician, whatever side of the aisle you're on. Deindustrialization was a huge component in people feeling that they had to either go with heavily pro-union or pro-populist or whatever you feel, because it was a collapse. It wasn't a rational reallocation of resources. It was a collapse because the institutions stopped being functional. And I can imagine a similar decorporatization that sounds good right now. Like, oh, the corporations are too big. No, the corporations aren't very good. Like, it's good that you can have 100,000 people working together and producing far better outcomes per person than they would if they worked individually. And right now, AI is supporting, and these agents are supporting individuals doing incredible things. They have not made their way into corporations. We're not getting the benefits of society because most of the value of our society comes out of large corporations in terms of huge amounts of steel or cars or consumer goods or services, are because people coordinate together. And again, the people who run those didn't get there because they think about autonomy. They think about raw productivity. And if I'm Microsoft, I need to make them to prevent the deindustrialization equivalent that's going to happen with AI of these big collapsing.
Process engineers have optimized these businesses, essentially, is what we're saying, these large enterprises, because you need all of this orchestration. Things need to run smoothly, and you've got all the stuff that needs to happen. The failure often is that we treat the entirety of the business that way, right? Including the customers, right? Oh, they're just a cog in the machine. And now we have, design thinking and all of these things to realize, no, yeah, maybe the business is 90% like that, but you got to hold space for the consumer because that's flexible and changing and whatever. What we're postulating is that creative, flexible, constantly changing part of the business is going to increase, right? And so the process stiff part of the business is Microsoft is going to tend to think about the business like that. And so when they bring out their Microsoft Business Agent, you can configure this to control your employees. That's probably what they're going to do. They're going to think of the employee as like 100% process. We can just like turn these screws and this stuff is going to happen. And I suppose as long as they keep, and we pick Microsoft, who knows, but as long as they keep thinking about the world that way, they're going to have Openclaws of the world actually probably grow into big businesses.
Yeah, you look at
because they can handle like creativity, the flexibility.
Yeah, I remember, like the 1999 to 2004 era, which was really like Google kind of supplanted all existing companies as the only functional company in my mind, right? They were cost effective, they were high tech, but they also treated their workers, the 20% time and the high levels of autonomy. But I don't think if we look forward for the next 20 years, the ideal is that we essentially need to produce all new corporations to replace the existing ones, right? But business culture in the 90s was so broken. You had like the General Electric model, Jack Welch, we're going to cut the lowest 10%, we're going to measure the shit out of everybody, and then we're going to financialize and improve our, ROIC and stuff like that. And it destroyed American business. But luckily, we had new ones that grew just as fast. And we had the big drop in 2000, another big drop in 2008. And I think both of those were a cause of a highly ineffective corporate culture. And, the changes in finance and technology forced their hand and effectively in two big waves, totally reconfigured. If you look at the top 100 companies, top 20 companies in 1999, it's just, you don't recognize anything in 2000, even 2015. And if we go through the same thing, like it's not good to have our institutions collapse every 20 years. Why does your company exist right now? And if it's because like you employ a lot of people, how are these people going to keep track? And it's very likely that people are much more wedded to their management systems and their style of manage than they are to their overall mission as a company. They're just much more interested in doing things their way because that's who they are. They're the guy who's good at doing this.
Well, there's tremendous comfort in it too. Yeah.
It's comfort. They've built a brand around it. Why them versus another CEO? That's a good question. If it is a really AI age, maybe I shouldn't be the CEO. They're not going to do that. There's an agency problem there. And their board isn't going to replace them because there's no evidence yet. And it's all going to happen. It's going to sweep them out of power very, very quickly. And Microsoft, if it knows what's best for them, is going to be grabbing these guys by the shirt collars and saying, look, you need to actually change your company to adopt a good business practices. But that's not what they do. They sell software. They sell things that do things, not reorientations of thinking. And so I'm worried for businesses. But it's cool if you're small and you're good at using Claude Code really fast.
Yeah, I'm going to give a prediction here, somewhat related. I think we're going to see the first AI founders before the end of the year. And by that, I mean a human who has an idea and or maybe doesn't even have an idea. Their
Multiple
agent comes to them.
there's already single guys who went out
Yeah.
and are building companies. It's already here. They talked about the first $1 billion one person startup. And I bet if Openclaw is in
I'm
it.
even saying more extreme than that. I'm saying I don't even run the business. Like, I check in the evening and my agent tells me, like, we got some more data on this widget. We're going to sell more of that on
Mhm.
Instagram. Um, so with that said, Matt, we're now 48 minutes into this 30-minute episode. So I love the topic. Let's give you the closing remarks on the episode.
Yeah. I think a big prediction this year is that people will be talking within 6 months by the summer, like July 15th, whatever, like by the Leo season, um, about AI being their manager. I think and if nothing else, they'll feel much more prompted by AI. They'll be bugged by AI unbidden. They will not go to AI and tell it to do, but there'll be a public theme that AI is intruding in our life and demanding more from us rather than us going the other way. And I think that is what we're going to see. So this summer, July 15th or after, let's come back and evaluate that prediction. And I think that will be a good way to frame what's happening to us over the next few months.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Great
Thanks again.
episode. Love it. Let's wrap it there. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.